The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the worn sidewalks of a forgotten corner of Los Angeles, a place where the city's glitz seemed a distant rumor. Clint Eastwood, the weathered icon of cinema, strolled with a quiet intensity, his hands clasped behind his back. The relentless hum of Hollywood had grown tiresome, a cacophony that drowned out the whispers of his own soul. He sought solace in these unglamorous streets, hoping to recapture the raw, unvarnished truth that had once fueled his art. Each cracked pavement, each faded storefront, held a story, and Clint, a storyteller at heart, felt a kinship with their silent narratives. He was a man who had seen it all, the dizzying heights of fame and the crushing lows of betrayal, and today, a sense of weariness clung to him like a second skin. The memory of Richard, his closest confidant turned Judas, still left a bitter taste, a constant reminder of the fragility of trust. Meanwhile, a few blocks away, 13-year-old Miguel trudged home, his shoulders slumped with the weight of a life far beyond his years. School books pressed against his thin frame, a stark contrast to the gnawing emptiness in his stomach. The vibrant murals that adorned the walls of his neighborhood, bursting with color and life, seemed to mock his own gray reality. He was a bright boy, his mind quick and inquisitive, but the relentless struggle of poverty had begun to chip away at his youthful optimism. The unfairness of it all stung: the endless hustling of his mother, the constant worry about making ends meet, the dreams that felt perpetually out of reach. He longed for a glimpse of the world beyond their cramped apartment, a world where opportunities weren't a luxury but a given. Today, like most days, a knot of frustration tightened in his chest, a silent rebellion against the hand life had dealt him. He kicked a loose pebble down the street, his gaze fixed on the cracked pavement, lost in thought. Suddenly, his foot nudged something solid. He looked down and saw a rich brown leather wallet lying forlornly on the ground, as if discarded by a careless hand. Hesitantly, Miguel bent down and picked it up. It felt heavy, substantial. A flicker of curiosity mixed with apprehension ran through him. He glanced around the deserted street. No one was in sight. His heart began to pound against his ribs. He could feel the thickness of the contents through the leather. His mind raced. This could be it, a reprieve, a stroke of luck in a life devoid of such fortune. He could use the money to help his mother, to ease the constant burden she carried. Maybe, just maybe, this was a sign. With trembling fingers, he flipped open the wallet. A cascade of crisp $100 bills greeted him, a sum so large it made his head spin. Credit cards with unfamiliar names peeked out from their slots. And then, his gaze fell upon a worn photograph tucked into a side compartment. It was an old black and white picture of a younger Clint Eastwood, his arm slung around another man, both their faces radiating youthful camaraderie and shared dreams. A pang of recognition struck Miguel. He had seen that face countless times on movie screens, a legend etched in the annals of cinema. This was his wallet. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Miguel. The initial thrill of possibility warred with a deeply ingrained sense of right and wrong, instilled in him by his mother's unwavering moral compass despite their hardship. The money represented a potential escape, a chance to alleviate their immediate struggles. He could picture his mother's weary smile if he presented her with such a windfall. But the photograph hinted at a life, a history, a loss that went beyond mere monetary value. He imagined the owner's distress, the inconvenience, the sentimental loss of that faded image. He stood there for a long moment, the wallet heavy in his hand, the weight of the decision even heavier on his young shoulders. The street remained quiet, the setting sun painting the scene in hues of orange and purple, indifferent to the moral dilemma unfolding in the heart of a young boy. The faces of his hard-working mother and the legendary actor in the photograph seemed to flicker before his eyes, each pulling him in a different direction. Finally, with a sigh that seemed to release a small part of the burden, Miguel made his decision. He would take the wallet home. He needed to talk to his mother. She would know what to do. Her wisdom, forged in the crucible of adversity, had always been his guiding light. As he walked the remaining blocks, the initial excitement had faded, replaced by a quiet resolve. He knew the path of honesty wouldn't be the easiest, but somehow, he felt it was the only one that would truly bring him peace. The cramped apartment, usually filled with the comforting aroma of Sophia's tireless cooking, felt charged with a different kind of tension as Miguel laid the thick leather wallet on their small, worn kitchen table. Sophia, her face edged with the lines of hard work and sacrifice, looked at the object with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. Her eyes, though tired, held a sharp intelligence, a keen understanding of the world's often unforgiving nature. Miguel recounted the story of his discovery, his voice a low murmur, his gaze fixed on the wallet as if it held a magnetic pull. Sophia listened intently, her expression shifting from concern to contemplation. She picked up the wallet, its expensive leather a stark contrast to the calloused skin of her hands. She examined the contents, the substantial wad of cash, the array of credit cards, and finally, the faded photograph. A flicker of recognition crossed her face as she studied the image of the younger Clint Eastwood. The name resonated even in their modest world, a symbol of success in a life far removed from their own. "Miguel," she said softly, her voice carrying a weight of experience, "this is a lot of money." Her eyes met his, searching for any hint of deceit or misguided temptation. "Are you sure you didn't?" Miguel shook his head vehemently. "No, Mama. I found it. On the street." A long silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant sirens of the city. Sophia knew the desperation that gnawed at them, the constant struggle to make ends meet. This money could solve so many immediate problems, alleviate so much stress. A fleeting thought crossed her mind, a silent prayer for a change in their fortunes. But then, her gaze fell back on the photograph, on the faces of the two young men, full of hope and promise. "We have to return it, Miguel," she said finally, her voice firm but gentle. "This doesn't belong to us. No matter how much we need it, taking what isn't ours will only bring more trouble." Miguel's shoulders slumped slightly. He had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that his mother might see this as a sign, an answer to their prayers. But he also knew the unwavering integrity that formed the bedrock of her character. He had been raised on stories of honesty and the importance of doing the right thing, even when it was difficult. Together, they located a contact number within the wallet, a business card for a talent agency. Sophia, her English hesitant but determined, made the call. After a brief and somewhat bewildered conversation with a representative, they managed to convey the message that they had found Clint Eastwood's lost wallet. The response was immediate and filled with a palpable sense of urgency. A meeting was arranged for the following morning. Miguel and Sophia waited with a nervous anticipation that filled their small apartment. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into a world far beyond their own, a world of fame and fortune that they had only glimpsed from afar. The next day, a sleek black car pulled up outside their building. Clint Eastwood, his presence filling the doorway even before he spoke, stood before them. His eyes, the same piercing blue that had captivated audiences for decades, held a mixture of relief and gratitude as he looked at Miguel and Sophia. He was taller than Miguel had imagined, his weathered face a roadmap of a life lived fully. Sophia, her hands clasped nervously in front of her, offered the wallet. Clint took it, his fingers brushing hers in a brief, polite gesture. He quickly checked the contents, his relief evident. He pulled out a thick stack of bills. "Please," he said, extending the money towards them. "This is the least I can do for your honesty." Sophia instinctively recoiled. "No, sir," she said, her voice firm. "We don't want your money. It wasn't ours to begin with." Clint looked at them, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He had expected gratitude, perhaps even a plea for help. But here stood a woman and her son, their dignity unwavering despite their circumstances. After a moment, a small smile touched the corner of his lips. He tucked the money back into his pocket. "Then allow me to offer something else," he said. He reached into his jacket and pulled out 2 tickets. These are for a box seat at tomorrow's Dodgers game. I hope you'll accept them as a small token of my appreciation." The tickets were for premium seats, a world away from the bleachers Miguel occasionally peered at from a distance. Miguel's eyes widened. He loved baseball, but tickets like these were an unimaginable luxury. He looked at his mother, who hesitated for a moment before nodding her consent. As Clint thanked them again, his words carrying a genuine warmth, Miguel couldn't help but feel a slight pang of disappointment. The tickets were wonderful, a dream come true, but a small part of him had hoped for something more tangible, something that could truly ease his mother's burdens. He couldn't shake the feeling that their act of honesty, while appreciated, hadn't been met with a reciprocal gesture that truly understood their needs. He accepted the tickets with a polite thank you, but a seed of understanding began to sprout within him. Sometimes, doing the right thing didn't always bring the immediate, life-altering rewards one might hope for. The following afternoon, Miguel and Sophia found themselves in a world they had only ever dreamed of. The roar of the crowd, the vibrant green of the field, the sheer energy of the stadium, it was a sensory overload in the most exhilarating way. Their box seats offered a panoramic view, a stark contrast to the cramped confines of their apartment. Miguel's eyes darted everywhere, taking in every detail, a wide grin plastered across his face. Sophia watched him, a rare smile gracing her lips, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy for her son and a lingering sense of disbelief at their unexpected fortune. During the game, a stadium official approached them and informed Miguel that Mr. Eastwood had requested to see him down on the field before the next inning. Miguel's heart leaped with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He followed the official down the winding ramps, the sounds and smells of the ballpark intensifying with each step. He found Clint standing near the dugout, talking with a group of players. The legendary actor turned as Miguel approached, a warm smile on his face. He introduced Miguel to the players, their larger-than-life presence making Miguel feel both awestruck and strangely comfortable. Clint spoke to them about Miguel's honesty, a genuine admiration in his voice. As the players returned to the field, Clint gestured for Miguel to sit beside him in his private box. Sophia joined them shortly after. As the game resumed, Clint began to share stories from his own life, his voice a low rumble that cut through the stadium noise. He spoke of his early struggles, the rejections he faced, and the unwavering determination that had propelled him forward. He talked about the importance of integrity in a world that often seemed to reward the unscrupulous. Then, his tone shifted, a shadow passing over his features. He recounted the story of Richard Callahan, his former representative, his closest friend, the man who had betrayed his trust in a way that had shaken him to his core. He spoke of the sting of that betrayal, the disillusionment that had followed, and the long road back to trusting anyone fully. He looked at Miguel, his gaze direct and earnest. "Miguel," he said, his voice carrying a weight of experience, "what you did, it reminded me that there are still good people in this world. People who choose the right path, not because of what they might gain, but because it's the right thing to do." He paused, his eyes searching Miguel's. "Doing the right thing doesn't always bring immediate rewards, son. In fact, sometimes it can feel like you're the only one paying the price. But it defines who you are. It shapes your character. And in the long run, that's the most valuable thing you can possess." As the game continued, Clint shared more anecdotes, weaving in lessons about perseverance, resilience, and the importance of staying true to oneself. He listened intently as Miguel spoke about his own dreams and aspirations, his intelligence shining through his youthful shyness. Sophia watched the two of them, a sense of hope blossoming within her. Clint Eastwood, a man of immense influence, was taking an interest in her son. By the end of the game, a connection had formed between the aging icon and the young boy from a different world. Clint saw in Miguel a spark of genuine integrity, a quality he had come to value above all else. Miguel, in turn, saw beyond the movie star persona to the thoughtful, experienced man who had faced his own share of hardships. As they said goodbye that evening, there was an unspoken understanding, a sense that their paths might cross again. Clint had planted a seed of belief in Miguel, not just in the possibility of a better future, but in the enduring power of doing what is right, regardless of the immediate outcome. He had begun to see Miguel not just as a recipient of his gratitude, but perhaps, as someone who carried a similar moral compass, a potential inheritor of the values he held dear. Weeks turned into a month, and the memory of the baseball game began to feel like a cherished dream. Life for Miguel and Sophia settled back into its familiar rhythm of hard work and quiet resilience. Then, a new figure entered their lives, a man with a smooth voice and an even smoother demeanor, Richard Callahan. Richard appeared seemingly out of nowhere, armed with a disarming smile and an air of effortless confidence. He introduced himself to Sophia as an old associate of Mr. Eastwood, someone who had heard about Miguel's commendable honesty. He spoke of Clint in glowing terms, painting a picture of a generous and grateful man. Clint was so impressed with Miguel, Richard would say, his eyes twinkling with what seemed like genuine warmth. He told me what a remarkable young man he is. And you, Sophia, you've raised a truly exceptional son. Sophia, weary from years of facing the harsh realities of life, listened with a cautious ear. She had learned the hard way that opportunities that seemed too good to be true often were. Yet, Richard's words were carefully chosen, playing on her natural desire for a better life for Miguel. Richard began to visit them regularly, bringing small gifts for Miguel and offering Sophia words of encouragement about her various jobs. He spoke of investment opportunities, ventures that could potentially change their lives for the better. He presented them with glossy brochures and complex financial jargon, painting a picture of a future free from financial worry. He often steered the conversation towards Clint, subtly suggesting that the baseball tickets were just the beginning of the actor's appreciation. Clint is a man of great wealth, Sophia, Richard would say, leaning in conspiratorially. He doesn't forget those who do him a good turn. But sometimes, you need to show him you're worthy of his further generosity. You need to be proactive. He started to plant seeds of doubt in Miguel's mind about Clint's intentions. Think about it, Miguel, Richard said one afternoon, his arm casually draped around the boy's shoulders. 2 baseball tickets? For someone who returned a wallet full of cash and valuable cards? Doesn't it seem a little symbolic? Like he's testing you? Seeing if you'll be satisfied with a small gesture. Miguel, still young and somewhat naive, found himself increasingly confused. Richard's words resonated with the fleeting disappointment he had felt after receiving only the tickets. Could it be true? Was Clint's gratitude conditional? Was he expecting something more from them? Richard was a master manipulator, his words like honeyed poison. He played on their insecurities, their desires, their hopes for a brighter future. He subtly pitted Clint against them, suggesting that the actor, despite his kind words, might not fully understand their struggles. Clint lives in a different world, Miguel, Richard would say, his voice laced with false empathy. He means well, I'm sure. But he's never had to worry about where his next meal is coming from. He might not realize the true impact a real investment could have on your lives. Sophia, despite her initial caution, found herself wavering. Richard's persistence and seemingly genuine concern were slowly eroding her defenses. The promise of a better future for Miguel was a powerful lure, one she found increasingly difficult to resist. As Richard's influence grew, Miguel found himself questioning his initial trust in Clint. Had he been naive to think that a simple act of honesty would lead to something more substantial? Richard's insinuations were like a persistent drip, slowly wearing away at his certainty. The world, it seemed, was more complicated, more transactional than his young mind had initially grasped. The clear lines of right and wrong were beginning to blur, clouded by the enticing whispers of opportunity and the nagging doubt that perhaps, they deserved more. The unexpected reel of their lives, once set on a path of simple integrity, was beginning to tangle with the threads of ambition and uncertainty, thanks to the insidious charm of Richard Callahan. As the weeks passed, Richard Callahan's presence in Miguel and Sophia's lives became increasingly pervasive. He was a constant fixture, always with a new proposition, a new investment opportunity that promised exponential returns with minimal risk, or so he claimed. His charm, initially disarming, began to feel cloying, his attentiveness bordering on suffocating. Sophia, though still somewhat hesitant, found herself drawn in by the allure of financial stability, a prospect that had always seemed just beyond her grasp. Miguel, however, felt a growing unease. Richard's constant subtle criticisms of Clint, his insinuations of hidden motives, and his insistence on secrecy began to grate on the boy's innate sense of fairness. One afternoon, while Richard was explaining the intricacies of a particularly convoluted investment involving overseas real estate, he left his briefcase open on their small table. Miguel, feigning disinterest, subtly edged closer. His eyes scanned the documents within, a jumble of legal-looking papers filled with unfamiliar terms and impressive-looking seals. But tucked beneath a stack of these documents, something caught his eye: a file bearing Clint Eastwood's name. Curiosity piqued, Miguel waited until Richard was distracted in a phone call with Sophia before carefully sliding the file out. His heart pounded in his chest as he quickly flipped through the contents. It contained copies of financial statements, agreements, and email correspondences. As he scanned the emails, a particular exchange between Richard and an unknown entity sent a chill down his spine. The language was coded, hinting at financial manipulations and the deliberate obscuring of assets. There were references to undue influence and vulnerable parties, phrases that struck a disconcerting chord within Miguel. He recognized some of the properties mentioned in the documents, properties that Richard had recently tried to persuade Sophia to invest in, claiming they were undervalued and ripe for quick profit. But the emails suggested a different story, a deliberate scheme to inflate their value and potentially defraud investors. And then, he saw a series of heavily edited documents that appeared to show Clint transferring significant sums of money to Richard, along with email drafts seemingly authored by Clint authorizing these transactions. But something felt off. The tone of the emails didn't sound like the Clint Eastwood he had briefly encountered, the man of few but impactful words. A knot of dread tightened in Miguel's stomach. He quickly slipped the file back into Richard's briefcase, his mind racing. Could Richard be trying to manipulate Clint? Were the investment opportunities he was presenting to Sophia somehow connected to this? The pieces began to fall into place, painting a disturbing picture of deceit and potential exploitation. He wrestled with the information, torn between his loyalty to Sophia and a growing sense of responsibility towards Clint. He didn't know Clint well, but the actor's genuine kindness at the ballpark and his heartfelt words about integrity had left a lasting impression. He couldn't stand by and watch Richard potentially take advantage of him, especially after Clint had shown them such unexpected generosity. That evening, after Richard had left with another round of promises and glossy brochures, Miguel confided in Sophia. He recounted what he had seen in the briefcase, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and indignation. He described the emails, the manipulated documents, and his growing suspicion of Richard's motives. Sophia listened intently, her initial skepticism slowly giving way to concern. Richard's constant reassurances and the lure of financial security had begun to lower her guard. But Miguel's detailed account, coupled with the nagging feeling that something about Richard had always seemed a little too perfect, reignited her wariness. "Are you sure, Miguel?" she asked, her brow furrowed with worry. "This is a serious accusation." "Yes, Mama," Miguel insisted, his voice firm. "I saw it with my own eyes. The emails, they didn't sound right. And the documents, they looked like they had been changed." The weight of Miguel's words hung heavy in the air. Sophia knew her son. He was an honest boy, and he wouldn't make up something like this. A cold dread began to creep into her heart. Had they been so blinded by the hope of a better future that they had failed to see the danger lurking beneath Richard's charming facade? Miguel knew what he had to do. Despite his fear and uncertainty, he couldn't remain silent. He had to tell Clint. He had to warn him about Richard. But the thought of confronting someone as powerful and influential as Richard, and the possibility that Clint might not believe him, filled him with trepidation. He was just a kid, and Richard was a sophisticated, persuasive man. Who would Clint believe? Despite his doubts, the memory of Clint's words "it defines who you are" echoed in his mind. He knew, deep down, that remaining silent would be a betrayal of his own conscience. He had to trust that the truth, however difficult, would ultimately prevail. The unexpected reel of their lives had taken another sharp turn, plunging them into a world of potential conflict and forcing Miguel to confront a moral dilemma far beyond his years. Gathering all his courage, Miguel managed to find a contact number for Clint Eastwood's personal assistant. He stammered out a message, requesting an urgent meeting, hinting at information of great importance. To his surprise, a reply came quickly, arranging a meeting at Clint's office the following day. The next morning, Miguel, accompanied by a visibly anxious Sophia, found himself in the opulent waiting room of Clint Eastwood's production company. The polished surfaces, the framed movie posters, the hushed atmosphere, it was a world away from their modest apartment. Clint's assistant, a composed woman named Eleanor, greeted them warmly and led them into a spacious office overlooking the bustling city. Clint Eastwood rose from behind his large wooden desk, his expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. He gestured for them to sit down. "Miguel," he began, his voice calm but direct, "Eleanor said you had something important to tell me." Miguel took a deep breath, his heart pounding. He recounted his interactions with Richard Callahan, the investment proposals, and finally, his discovery of the file in Richard's briefcase. He described the suspicious emails and the manipulated documents, his voice gaining confidence as he spoke the truth. Sophia sat beside him, her hand resting reassuringly on his arm, offering silent support. Clint listened intently, his gaze unwavering. When Miguel finished, a thoughtful silence filled the room. Clint's expression was unreadable. "Richard and we go back a long way," Clint said finally, his voice tinged with a hint of sadness. "He was like family to me. It's hard to believe." His hesitation was a blow to Miguel's already fragile confidence. He had hoped that Clint would immediately recognize the danger. The fear that Richard's charm had even fooled a man as experienced as Clint began to gnaw at him. "Mr. Eastwood," Miguel said, his voice trembling slightly, "I know it's hard to believe, but I saw the emails. They didn't sound like you. And the financial papers, they looked like they had been changed. He was trying to get my mother to invest in these properties, but the emails, they suggested it was a scam." Just then, the office door opened, and Richard Callahan walked in, a wide, seemingly genuine smile on his face. "Clint, old friend," he said, his eyes widening in feigned surprise as he saw Miguel and Sophia. "What a pleasant surprise! I was just in the neighborhood and thought I'd drop by." The atmosphere in the room became instantly charged. Richard's arrival felt calculated, almost theatrical. "Richard," Clint said, his voice now firm, "Miguel has just told me some disturbing things." Richard's smile faltered, replaced by an expression of wounded disbelief. "Miguel? What on earth?" He turned to Miguel, his eyes narrowing slightly. "What have you been saying?" Miguel, though intimidated by Richard's presence, stood his ground. He recounted again what he had seen, his voice clear and steady. Richard listened, his initial surprise giving way to a look of indignation. "Clint, you can't possibly believe this boy," Richard scoffed, turning back to Clint. "He's just a kid. He doesn't understand these things. Sophia, surely you can explain." He tried to appeal to Sophia, but she remained silent, her gaze fixed on Richard with a newfound suspicion. "Miguel has been very specific, Richard," Clint interrupted, his voice carrying a steel edge. "He mentioned emails, financial documents." Richard's composure began to crack. He stammered, trying to explain away Miguel's accusations as misunderstandings, youthful fantasies, anything but the truth. He even tried to turn the tables on Miguel, suggesting that the boy was being manipulative or perhaps had misunderstood what he saw. It was then that Miguel reached into his backpack and pulled out his phone. Before meeting with Clint, he had discreetly taken photos of some of the key emails and documents on Richard's open briefcase. He held out his phone to Clint. "Mr. Eastwood, I took pictures." Clint took the phone, his eyes scanning the images. As he read the email exchanges and examined the inconsistencies in the financial statements, his expression hardened. The pieces clicked into place. The coded language, the discrepancies, it all aligned with Miguel's account. Richard watched, his face paling as the truth began to dawn on him. He knew he was cornered. Clint looked up from the phone, his gaze piercing. "Richard," he said, his voice low and dangerous, "I trusted you. You were like family." The pain in his eyes was palpable, a stark reminder of the deep betrayal he had once suffered. Richard tried one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation, but the evidence on Clint's phone was irrefutable. The carefully constructed facade had crumbled. In that moment, Clint faced a difficult choice. He could choose to ignore the evidence, protect his reputation, and perhaps even rationalize Richard's actions. Or he could stand with the truth, no matter how painful, and acknowledge the boy who had risked everything to expose the deception. He handed the phone back to Miguel, his eyes filled with a newfound respect. He turned to Richard, his voice cold and final. "Get out, Richard. Our relationship is over." The confrontation had reached its climax. Clint Eastwood, a man who had built his career on portraying characters of unwavering integrity, had chosen to believe a young boy's honesty over the lies of a trusted friend. The unexpected reel of their lives had once again turned, this time solidifying an unlikely alliance built on truth and trust. The immediate aftermath of Richard's expulsion was a whirlwind of hushed phone calls and tense meetings within Clint's production company. The weight of the betrayal hung heavy in the air, a palpable sense of shock rippling through the staff. Clint, though deeply wounded, acted swiftly and decisively. Legal proceedings were initiated against Richard, and a thorough internal audit of his past dealings was launched. Predictably, Richard did not go quietly. Cornered and desperate, he lashed out, resorting to the very tactics of manipulation and deceit that had defined his professional life. He leaked carefully crafted stories to the tabloids, painting himself as the victim of a vengeful and paranoid Clint Eastwood, fueled by the baseless accusations of a young opportunist. The headlines screamed of a Hollywood legend in decline, susceptible to the machinations of a conniving teenager and his impressionable mother. The media frenzy was immediate and relentless. Paparazzi camped outside Clint's office and Sophia's modest apartment. Talk shows buzzed with speculation, dissecting every detail of the unfolding drama. Public opinion, initially sympathetic to Clint, began to waver under the barrage of Richard's carefully planted narratives. The image of the grizzled hero was being tarnished, replaced by whispers of paranoia and irrationality. Miguel and Sophia found themselves thrust into the harsh glare of unwanted publicity. Their lives, already challenging, were now further complicated by the constant intrusion of reporters and photographers. Sophia, fiercely protective of Miguel, tried to shield him from the worst of it, but the whispers and stares followed them everywhere. Seeing the damage Richard's lies were inflicting on Clint's reputation, Miguel felt a surge of responsibility. He couldn't stand idly by while the man who had shown him kindness was being dragged through the mud because of his honesty. He knew he had to speak out, to present his side of the story, to reveal the truth behind Richard's accusations. Despite Sophia's understandable apprehension, Miguel was resolute. With Clint's support and guidance, he agreed to a televised interview. It was a daunting prospect for a boy who had always shied away from the spotlight, but the burning desire to set the record straight outweighed his fear. The day of the interview arrived, thick with nervous anticipation. Miguel sat beside Eleanor in the green room, his hands clammy, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched Clint's earlier segment on the monitor, the actor speaking with quiet dignity, acknowledging the betrayal but refraining from engaging in a mudslinging contest with Richard. Then, it was Miguel's turn. Under the bright studio lights, facing a seasoned interviewer and a national audience, he spoke with a surprising clarity and composure. He recounted his discovery of the wallet, his decision to return it, his subsequent interactions with Richard, and finally, his discovery of the incriminating documents. He didn't embellish or exaggerate. He simply presented the facts, his youthful earnestness and unwavering sincerity shining through the television screen. He spoke of the inconsistencies in Richard's stories, the suspicious emails he had photographed, and the genuine concern he felt for Mr. Eastwood. He also spoke about his mother, her strong moral compass, and the values she had instilled in him. He painted a picture of a hard-working single mother striving to provide for her son, a stark contrast to Richard's insinuations of opportunism. The impact of Miguel's interview was immediate and profound. His genuine demeanor and the straightforward recounting of events resonated with viewers. The public narrative began to shift. People saw not a conniving teenager, but a courageous young boy standing up for what was right. Clint watched the interview from his office, a sense of quiet pride washing over him. Miguel's honesty and bravery in the face of adversity were truly remarkable. He had not only vindicated Clint but had also exposed Richard's true nature for all to see. As the days following the interview unfolded, Richard's carefully constructed web of lies began to unravel completely. The internal audit at Clint's company revealed a pattern of financial irregularities and manipulations orchestrated by Richard over several years. Other individuals who had been victims of his schemes came forward with their own stories. The weight of evidence against Richard became overwhelming. The tabloids that had initially sensationalized his accusations now turned on him, their headlines screaming about his treachery and deceit. The public, once swayed by his spin, now viewed him with disdain. Miguel's courageous act had not only cleared Clint's name but had also brought Richard's long-standing deceptions to light. The unexpected reel of their lives had once again delivered a twist, revealing the power of truth and the unexpected impact of a young boy's unwavering integrity in the face of greed and corruption. The unveiling was complete, and the spotlight, once harsh and accusatory, now shone on the quiet heroism of Miguel and the resilience of Clint Eastwood. The legal repercussions for Richard Callahan were swift and severe. Faced with irrefutable evidence of fraud, embezzlement, and defamation, he was stripped of his professional licenses and subjected to a barrage of lawsuits. His reputation, once a valuable commodity, was now utterly tarnished, leaving him isolated and facing a bleak future. The gilded cage he had so meticulously constructed had finally slammed shut. For Sophia, the fallout was unexpectedly positive. Clint, deeply grateful for her integrity and the unwavering support she had shown Miguel, ensured that she received legal counsel and assistance in navigating the complexities of the situation. He also learned more about her own struggles and the various jobs she juggled to make ends meet. Impressed by her work ethic and resilience, he offered her a stable and well-compensated position within his production company, managing some of the administrative tasks and providing a steady income that she had long deserved. The fear that had haunted her for so long, the fear of life constantly snatching away moments of hope, began to recede, replaced by a newfound sense of security. Miguel's life also underwent a significant transformation. His courageous actions and articulate defense of truth had not gone unnoticed. Offers of support and recognition poured in. Among them was a full scholarship to a prestigious private school known for its excellent academic and arts programs. It was an opportunity that would have been unimaginable just months before, a chance for Miguel to nurture his sharp intellect and explore his burgeoning creativity in an environment that fostered growth and learning. Clint became a mentor figure to Miguel, recognizing his innate intelligence and his strong moral compass. He saw in the young boy a kindred spirit, someone who understood the importance of integrity and the power of storytelling. They spent hours together, Clint sharing anecdotes from his long and storied career, offering advice and encouraging Miguel to pursue his own interests and talents. The relationship between Clint and Miguel blossomed into an unlikely but deep friendship, bridging the vast chasm of age and experience. Clint found a renewed sense of hope and purpose in Miguel's unwavering honesty, a reminder that true integrity still existed in a world often clouded by cynicism. Miguel, in turn, found in Clint a mentor who believed in him, who saw his potential, and who offered him a glimpse into a world of possibilities he had only dared to dream of. The media attention surrounding them eventually subsided, the relentless news cycle moving on to the next sensation. But the impact of their story lingered, a testament to the power of honesty and the unexpected rewards that can sometimes follow doing the right thing. The unexpected reel of their lives had delivered a series of profound changes, demonstrating that even in the sprawling landscape of Hollywood and the quiet struggles of everyday life, integrity and kindness could indeed lead to opportunities beyond imagination. The repercussions of Richard's betrayal had ultimately paved the way for a brighter future for Miguel and Sofia, and had reaffirmed Clint's faith in the fundamental goodness of humanity. Life settled into a new rhythm for Miguel. He thrived at his new school, his natural curiosity and sharp mind flourishing in the stimulating environment. He excelled in his studies and discovered a passion for creative writing, often spending hours crafting stories that reflected his own experiences and the lessons he had learned. His bond with Clint remained strong. They would often meet for lunch or spend afternoons at Clint's ranch, talking about everything from movies and books to life's bigger questions. Clint saw in Miguel a natural storyteller, an innate understanding of human nature and the complexities of right and wrong. One afternoon, as Miguel was visiting Clint, the legendary actor handed him a worn, leather-bound script. The title page was blank except for a single word scrawled in Clint's familiar handwriting, "Beginnings." Miguel looked up, a question in his eyes. Clint smiled, a hint of his iconic squint crinkling the corners of his eyes. "It's a project I started a while back," he explained, his voice thoughtful. "Never quite finished it. Got bogged down in the details, lost the thread." He paused, his gaze meeting Miguel's. "You," he continued, "you have a way of seeing things clearly, Miguel. A sense of what's important. You lived a story, a real one, with its own set of challenges and triumphs." He gestured towards the script. "You wrote your own story, Miguel. You chose honesty when it was the harder path. You stood up for what was right when it would have been easier to stay silent. That's a powerful narrative." Clint leaned back in his chair, his gaze distant for a moment. "Hollywood is full of stories, Miguel. Some are entertaining, some are forgettable. But the ones that truly resonate, the ones that stay with you, are the ones that speak to something real, something true about the human spirit." He looked back at Miguel, his expression earnest. "This script, it's just a collection of ideas, a few scenes, some half-formed characters. I want you to take it. Read it. See if anything sparks for you." Miguel held the script in his hands, its weight feeling significant. "You have a voice, Miguel," Clint continued. "You have a perspective that the world needs to hear. You've already shown your courage in speaking your truth. Now, use that understanding, that empathy, to help others write their stories. To give voice to the voiceless. To explore the complexities of the human condition." He smiled warmly. "Don't just finish this script, Miguel. Make it your own. Infuse it with your experiences, your insights. Tell the story that only you can tell." Miguel felt a profound sense of honor and responsibility. Clint Eastwood, a towering figure in the world of storytelling, was entrusting him with a piece of his own creative work, encouraging him to find his own voice. It was more than just a script, it was a passing of the torch, a recognition of his potential. As he left Clint's office that day, the leather-bound script clutched tightly in his hands, Miguel felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Writing a compelling story was a challenge, especially for someone his age. But he also knew that he had something to say, something important to share. The unexpected reel of his life had led him to this moment, to this opportunity to not just live a meaningful story, but to craft them for others. The blank pages within that worn script held the promise of new beginnings, not just for the unfinished film, but for Miguel himself. Years passed. Miguel, under Clint's continued mentorship, blossomed into a gifted screenwriter. He didn't just finish the script Clint had given him, he reimagined it, weaving in themes of social justice, the complexities of trust, and the enduring power of human connection, themes that resonated deeply with his own life experiences. The film, when finally released, garnered critical acclaim for its nuanced storytelling and its fresh, authentic voice. Miguel never forgot the unexpected turn of events that had set him on this path. He remained close to Clint, their bond evolving from mentor and protégé to a deep and abiding friendship. He often spoke of the lessons he had learned, the importance of integrity, the unexpected rewards of kindness, and the enduring impact of a single act of courage. Sophia thrived in her role at Clint's company, her hard work and dedication finally recognized and rewarded. She watched with immense pride as Miguel achieved his dreams, her heart filled with gratitude for the unexpected blessings that had come their way. Clint, in his later years, often reflected on his encounter with Miguel. He saw the young screenwriter's success as a testament to the enduring power of human goodness. He had offered Miguel a chance, but it was Miguel's own innate integrity and talent that had paved his way. In entrusting him with that unfinished script, Clint had unknowingly passed on a different kind of legacy, a legacy of belief in the next generation, a recognition that stories could come from the most unexpected places, and that true talent often lay hidden, waiting for an opportunity to shine. One sunny afternoon, Miguel visited Clint on his ranch. They sat on the porch, watching the horses graze peacefully in the fields. Clint, his eyes twinkling, gestured towards a framed poster of Miguel's acclaimed film hanging on the wall. "You did good, kid," Clint said, his voice raspy but filled with genuine pride. "You took that little spark and turned it into a fire." Miguel smiled, a deep sense of gratitude welling up within him. "I couldn't have done it without you, Clint." Clint shook his head gently. "You had it in you all along, Miguel. You just needed a little push, a little belief." He looked out at the horizon, a reflective expression on his weathered face. "That old script, it was just a vessel. The real story was always yours to write." Years later, after Clint's passing, Miguel stood on a bustling film set, the energy of creation swirling around him. He was now a respected filmmaker in his own right, his films known for their depth, their humanity, and their unwavering commitment to telling stories that mattered. He held in his hand a new script, the pages filled with his own words, his own vision. The camera rolled, the director called action, and Miguel watched as his characters came to life, their stories unfolding against the backdrop of the world he had come to understand so well. As he stood there, a sense of quiet fulfillment washed over him. He had indeed written his own story, a story that began with a simple act of honesty on a dusty street corner and had blossomed into a legacy of creativity and impact. The unexpected reel of his life had played out in ways he could never have imagined, a testament to the enduring power of doing the right thing, and the profound connections that can be forged through trust and kindness. The final shot faded to black, leaving the audience with a lingering sense of hope and the quiet understanding that even the smallest acts of integrity can set in motion a chain of events that can change lives and shape legacies.